we are here for all of us to learn. And it's a platform where we can open up, ask questions, and it's a conversation. That's why we are sitting here today instead of standing, because we want to make it a conversation. I know usually when we are talking about marriage and relationship conversation or seminars, people have sex in mind as part and parcel of the topics. So we are taking it, step by step. We'll get there where we can talk about sex, because we believe that it's part and parcel of the relationship, but it doesn't start with sex. There are fundamentals and pillars of every relationship, and so we'll get there. So don't worry if today you are thinking it's the subject. It's not the subject. So today's subject is we want to talk about guarding and overcoming offense in relationships and marriage. So there's a part where we guard, and there is a part where we overcome. So it means that we have a responsibility to guard against offense, because it means that offense is inevitable. We will be offended, but we have a responsibility that we guard against offense, because if offense is inevitable and we have a responsibility to guard against offense, it just means that not everything that we get offended about deserves, we get offended about actually is intended to actually offend us. So just as much as we are aware that we are going to be offended, we have a responsibility to also guard against offense. But not only to guard against offense, when offense comes, our responsibility is not to settle in offense. Our responsibility is also to get to the place in our lives where we actually do overcome the offense. And if we are preparing ourselves to guard against offense and overcome it, it also simply means that we can expect to be offended. In any good relationship, there'll always be offense. That you can expect that you will be offended. You know, the fact that you are male and female, that in itself, just that difference in itself is just the source of offense, just because you are different. So you can always expect that offense is going to be inevitable. And I want to read something here that is also going to give us a deeper understanding from a biblical point of view what actually the word offense mean, and why we should actually endeavor to guard against offense and be able to overcome offense. The Greek word for offense there means, it's actually a word called scandalon, right? And it just basically means that offense is a trap, it's a snare, it's a stumbling block. So when you are offended, the way you look at offense, you know, sometimes we can feel like I'm entitled to, you know, to the sort of offense I'm experiencing. But you have a view that offense is a snare. I have a view that offense is a trap. And it's a trap from a spiritual point of view, because also the enemy will always look for the offense that is in our hearts, and is going to use that offense to actually mess up our relationship. And this also is just also in families. I know some of us have brothers and sisters, uncles or dads and moms. You can also recall how a simple misunderstanding led to a huge fight and and something that really hurt somebody, something that you didn't mean, or it was just misunderstood. But it just simply means that don't entertain offense in your heart, because when you entertain offense in your heart, you are basically entertaining a trap. You are basically entertaining a stumbling block, something that you shouldn't be having in your heart. So that's why we are saying that when offense comes, which definitely will come, we must endeavor to not only guard against it, but we must get to the place in our lives where we actually learn to overcome that offense. And I want to make a disclaimer here very quickly, is that there is also wisdom We are not talking about where there is abuse. This is not an invitation for us to stay and settle and fail to resolve certain issues in relationships. So we are saying, although it's inevitable that offense will come, we are not promoting abuse, right? So we are not saying, you are going to be beaten up. That's what Pastor said. So be prepared to be beaten up or to be emotionally, physically abused. That's not what we're trying to say. So if you find yourself in a situation where there is physical abuse, there is emotional abuse, there is wisdom that is required in that situation. It's not just about guarding against the blows and you say that's the solution. It just means that you have to, first of all, prioritize your health, prioritize protection and boundaries so that you are not subjected to abuse. So there's a difference, and a big difference, between offense and abuse, because I've seen that sometimes in relationship, especially when we have started to think about ourselves in a certain way, that we can actually accept that it's okay to be abused and it's okay to be treated in a bad way, and we settle in that environment. That's not what we are here to talk about when we're talking about offense. If you are in that situation, it just means that that situation requires you to set the boundaries and find ways to actually resolve that issue permanently. Maybe we'll talk about maybe a few things here. The reasons why offense happens. Why do offense happens? One of the reasons why offense happens, and I'll read a scripture first of all, is from James chapter 1, verse 2. We can gain wisdom there. It says, what causes fights and quarrels among you? So the Bible is asking, and the answer follows. Do they not come from your desires that battles within you? Right? So the Bible is asking, what causes offense? Do they not come from desires that are within you? So from this we can actually conclude and say offense do come from unexpected, unmet or unspoken expectation. When we get into relationships, we have our own expectation, and this expectation are expectations that are unspoken, and sometimes because they're unspoken, they also remain unmet, and we get offended just the fact that our expectation hasn't been met. And one of the things that you'll find out, especially to people that we have interacted with, maybe who got married, is the fact that they feel that they married a representative, not the person they dated. Because they find that when they were dating, the relationship was different, and it was great, it was good, and they enjoyed the person. Now that they have the wife, now they have the husband, it's not the person they dated. And in that, what we are seeing is that we begin to see unmet expectation. And we begin to unspoken expectation. We also begin to see unmet expectation or unmet needs. So offense do come because there are expectations that we had, that those expectations were not met. And I think there is a fundamental word here that we can focus on briefly. It's just unspoken. So you get into a relationship, or you are in a relationship right now. You have deep needs within you that you haven't spoken, right? You expect your wife to speak to you in a certain way, or your husband to speak to you in a certain way. These are unspoken. And because they're unspoken, it's very easy to stay in that state where you remain offended. Many offense stem from unmet desires or expectation that we haven't communicated. When expectations are not met, we feel disappointed, rejected, and unloved. And think about this, that these are unspoken, and because they're unspoken, it's you who is familiar with this sort of expectation. It doesn't mean that if you expect your partner to treat you in a certain way and they haven't treated you that way, it doesn't mean that they don't love you. It just means that there is a disconnection between what you do expect and how your partner basically show up as a demonstration of love. We've captured here first of one example, just to clarify the point. A wife expects a husband to express affection through words, but he shows love through actions. she feels unloved because the gentleman, shows love through actions. She expects that if you love me, I need you to show me. But he says he shows his love through words. That's unmet need, which then breeds a bit of offense. And doesn't mean that that person doesn't love. It's just that they love differently. And here is the thing about love, and I think it's connected to one of the points that we're going to raise, is that all of us have a way that we have experienced life, how we've been raised, how we saw our parents treating each other. And also we've been influenced by the movies, how, when we're watching a romantic movie, how partners treat each other and stuff like. And the funny thing is that most of and most of these guys that have demonstrated how to treat a wife or a husband in the movies, either they are divorced or they have never been married. So we have been influenced to think that love is like that. So when we get into the relationship, we have this expectation that we are going to be spoken to or be treated like in the movie, right? But when it's different to what we expected, offense does actually get in. Number two, and I'll hand over to my wife to also encourage us, it's miscommunication and assumption. This is a big one. Is that we miscommunicate, and when there's miscommunication, we assume. And I think one of the challenges in a relationship is that sometimes, although we fail to communicate, to speak about these unmet needs, we also have we like to conclude, we like to assume, and we react based on those assumptions. And when we react based on assumptions, definitely offense is going to be there. Misunderstood words, actions create false narratives. Instead of clarifying, we assume, and offense is born not from truth, but imagination and assumption. Because where we are offended because there's miscommunication and assumption, there is no truth, right? We just concluded that because she did this is what actually it means like this. And we are interpreting those assumptions and those experiences based on already established narrative within ourselves. Here's the point that I want us to reflect on. We tend to judge others based on their actions, but we judge ourselves based on our intentions. Right? So I make an assumption, I've judged you, and based on your actions, but I'm not treating myself to the same standard. I'm not holding myself to the same standard. This mental shortcut, ladies and gentlemen, causes us to misinterpret motives and personalize neutral behaviors. So here what we are actually being encouraged, if you look deeply, without really going to the solutions or strategies, is that clarify, and if you haven't understood what your partner meant, ask so that you can actually understand what they meant. And don't also force, because sometimes we already have received certain communication in a certain way. Don't push the feedback from your partner to fit your narrative. Because you are offended, and when you seek clarification, you still want your partner's response to fit into the narrative that you have already created so that you can justify your offense. Believe that what somebody said is actually true because they are the one who said it. And in that way, we will find that we will reduce, a bit of offense. Example here, a husband comes home quiet. His wife assumes he's upset with her. In reality, he's just mentally drained. Our assumption leads to emotional withdrawal. We have something that we do at home. If the rule is, if you're coming to the house and you are offended at work or where you have been, or you are tired or you're not feeling well, before you get home, you must text your partner and just say, you know what, today I'm not just feeling great. It has nothing to do with you. I just had a bad day. So that when you get to the house, your partner also, they already know that your attitude and your moods has nothing to do with them. They have everything to do with where they are coming from. That's really part and parcel of what we can do. But let me not stretch the point. Over to you.
Sure. Okay. So our time is fast spent today, but let's hop into the third cause of offense, which is really past wounds and personal insecurities. Past wounds and personal insecurities. And I'll just read from Hebrews. So Hebrews 12:15 says, "See to it that no bitter root grows up to cause trouble and defile many." No bitter root grows up to cause trouble and defile many. Now, a root of bitterness is really there or exists or comes whenever we've allowed disappointment to grow into resentment. Or in situations where we've experienced certain hurtful experiences or circumstances, and then we nurse the grudge. That on its own can also allow a root of bitterness to actually grow in us. And really what you see when dealing with offense is that offense triggers pain that is old, pain that has been there. And yes, it may happen in the present and in the current, but really our reaction is amplified based on what it's triggering or based on what it's unearthing in us because of an old pain. Psychologically, that's what emotional flashbacks are. So whenever somebody unintentionally hurts us, right? When somebody unintentionally hurts us, our brain can actually reactivate a past experience from past trauma or bring up childhood emotional memories. And therefore you find that your partner, your husband is saying A, and you suddenly just mount up and lash back. Such that when you think about the exchange, you're even wondering yourself, where did that come from? Unearthed issues or old pain that experience has actually just triggered and scratched and brought about. If we were to look at an example, let's say a young woman grew up in an environment where they were constantly ignored, constantly dismissed. And before I even build on that point, that's why it becomes important that we come to these sessions. Because not only are we building relationally, but we're also learning how we raise, what words we use with children mold the husband and wife you see today. So it's so critical. So back to our example. Let's say a woman was raised in an environment where she was consistently dismissed, where she grew up feeling ignored. And then her husband happens to, let's say, not consult her on one decision that he's made. He goes ahead and makes a decision. That has the power to make her feel like she's just an oversight. Meanwhile, on the husband's part, it was just a simple decision he chose to make for the greater good of the family, but he doesn't realize that it's actually unearthing a lifelong wound of rejection, of being dismissed, of being ignored. Past pain. Or if we look at another example, let's say we have a young man who was constantly belittled. And again, the power of our words in raising our children. Constantly belittled. And let's say his wife offers some feedback around, you could have addressed this differently. Offense springs up, even if her tone may have been gentle. So that's why we really need to guard against, past wounds as well as any insecurities. We actually need to get involved in lifelong introspection around why we react the way we do, where it stems from, where it comes from. This is just a quote that we came across as we were preparing, which says, through which we misjudge the present. The past, if not healed, becomes the lens through which we misjudge the present. So as you sit here, be it as married couples, be it as couples who are dating, be it as people who are interested in beginning a journey of relationship, I want you to ask yourself this question whenever you've been offended. Was your pain rooted in the moment of offense, or was it something deeper? Okay, the fourth aspects that tend to raise offense in us are pride and entitlement. Pride and entitlement. Proverbs 13:10 says, "By pride comes nothing but strife, but with the well-advised is wisdom." And essentially what we're seeing here is that pride leads to conflict. Doesn't matter. If we're going to hold on to being proud, it's bound to birth conflict in the relationship. 1 Corinthians 13, very famous in defining what love is, says, verse 5 in particular says, and it's speaking to love for context, it does not dishonor others, it is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered, and it keeps no records of wrongs. So what we're seeing here is that, pride will lead to conflict, but where there is love, we're being taught how it keeps no record of wrong. It doesn't dishonor. It's not self-seeking. So already we see biblically that there are insights, there's wisdom, there's counsel that is provided us in terms of how we navigate situations where something may be offensive and might trigger pride or a feeling of, no, I am entitled to be mad in this situation because I did no wrong. We need to guard against that. So pride, yes, does refuse to admit faults. Whereas entitlement tends to say, I deserve better. Okay, I deserve better, but it's always I, which sets us to really be easily offended. Because we're a journey of two people from two different backgrounds, two different experiences comes together. You are bound to differ on various aspects, and you really need to guard against both pride, but especially the feeling of entitlement in that relationship. From a psychological perspective, when someone challenges us, be it they're challenging our beliefs, our decisions, our behaviors, our ego gets impacted. So the ego threat is a real threat, and we need to be mindful of that because of our egos, we can tend to become defensive or offended just to protect or self-preserve ourselves. Can we share an example? Let's say we have a wife who feels disrespected when her husband or her boyfriend corrects her in public. And by boyfriend, I meant now a girlfriend, not, yeah? So when a wife feels disrespected when a husband corrects her in public, instead of talking it through, you find that she silently begins to breed resentment. And we need to guard against the thoughts that we entertain in our relationships. Sometimes we can be outwardly loving, but the thoughts we are entertaining because somebody has offended, we need to guard against them because he can easily offend me and I'll be smiling. Oh, don't worry, love, it's okay. But in my head, I've already started a certain narrative. Oh, look at what he did. So we need to be mindful and careful of that. A reflective point really here before, because I'm looking at time as well, before we just jump into some practical strategies to overcome offense is, am I offended because I'm hurt or because I feel challenged? How do we navigate those aspects in our relationships? Are you offended when you've experienced an offense because you're hurt, or because you've actually been challenged and perhaps there's an opportunity to introspect? At this point, we're just going to look at 4 strategies to help overcome offense. Thank you. I was being shown the time. 15. Yes, and over to you.
Thank you. Are you? Is it making sense? Okay. If you quickly are able to reflect on this conversation, you can actually see that relationships are more about working on ourselves than demanding on the transformation and change of the other. Are you seeing that? Because if we agree that offense will come, we can also see how actually offense comes about. We can also conclude that if I'm going to be a person who doesn't easily get offended, it means that I shouldn't avoid being in a relationship. That's not a solution. It means that I must work on myself, reflect inwardly, overcome certain things in my life that can make me a person who easily get offended. Are we seeing that? So that really is one of the things that this conversation is trying to bring across. If we want to overcome offense, it means that we have to live a life of forgiveness. She read a scripture where we are saying that love does not keep a record of wrongdoings. Because sometimes if we hold on to the thing that our partner has done in the past and we have kept the record, offense will keep on coming, and it's going to be very difficult to actually overcome that offense. So it just means that, and in forgiveness, really, and we have been learning this also in our leadership session, is that you don't forgive because somebody has apologized, right? That's not usually, because sometimes somebody can apologize and they can say sorry, and you still fail to forgive them. So forgiveness is a decision before it's a feeling. So I don't wait to feel good in my emotions and in my feelings before I forgive. Because usually most of us, including myself, at large, are guided by our emotions, right? So we choose first of all to say, although I'm battling, I've maybe perhaps gotten insight into why my partner spoke to me in a certain way or why they behaved in a certain way, and maybe you begin even to empathize with them because you've gotten insight. Although your emotions are not in a state where you feel like you are ready to forgive, you must make a decision to say, I will forgive while I battle with how I'm feeling. Here's what Ephesians tells us, chapter 4, verse 32. Forgive each other just as Christ forgave you. The example here is that Christ lays a foundation because he did not forgive us because we repented. When we repent, we're actually saying, I've received the forgiveness you offered. Are you seeing that? So the gospel is that Christ goes on the cross. Everyone in the world, ladies and gentlemen, their sins have been forgiven. The difference is we constantly refuse that forgiveness. So it's a personal choice. And Christ didn't wait for people to repent, then he gives them forgiveness, or he dies on the cross because, you have repented, then I must go and die for you. It doesn't work like that. So in dealing with relationship is that I should keep on growing such that when I'm offended, that I make a choice to forgive my wife even before she clarifies the point. Because forgiveness also isn't just about the person that you're forgiving, is that you are freeing yourself. Because as long as you hold on to the pain, to the frustration, to the misunderstanding, you are going to be oppressed. Some of you can understand in relationships that your partner at some point offended you and they went to bed. And you remain awake, trying to check, you offended me and, you are snoring or you are bothered, but the person has moved on because they didn't think that it should cut that deep. So by holding on to unforgiveness, you are actually punishing yourself more. So forgiveness is more of a benefit to you who has been offended than it is to the offender. Because of time, number 2 is that communicate the truth with compassion. I know some of us are coming, South Africa and just world and Africa at large is a rough environment. We were brought up in a very hostile, rough, and in tight environment and rough, maybe parents, and to survive also you needed to be rough. So we also come into relationship with those survival mentality and way of communicating, right? But in overcoming offense, it means that we should learn to communicate truth with compassion. It doesn't matter what truth I hold. This we have also learned in pastoral work. Doesn't matter what truth I hold. If I'm not communicating the truth with love, it's not going to be understood as though I love and care about that person. And I think in relationships sometimes we struggle to overcome, and we struggle to get out of a state where we are always offending each other because we do not really communicate truth with compassion. So if your partner has done something and you want to give feedback, don't say you are entitled to the way you are feeling and the way you have been offended, and then you come with all your emotions and your big words and frustration so that you can punish, the person who has offended you by your words. What you're doing is actually you're worsening the situation. Here's what Ephesians say, Ephesians chapter 4 verse 15 say, speak the truth in love. So if you have the truth, find better ways and better means to actually communicate that truth in love. Because if you do not communicate the truth in love, the value of what you're trying to communicate is going to diminish, and it's going to actually continue to create more offense in your relationship. Over to you.
Okay. The third point in overcoming offense really is to train your mind to interpret graciously the feedback that you are receiving. I love a verse in Philippians which says, Philippians 4 verse 8, finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. So we're actually being guided around whenever we face challenges, conflict in our relationships. Don't major on what he hasn't done, what she said. Major on whatever is admirable, whatever is excellent or worthy of praise. Because the truth is, we have a very active enemy that is working towards distracting us and destroying our relationships. So we need to get to a place where we retrain our thoughts. That no, what's been said is not that they are up against me. How about stepping back and saying, is it possible that he said what he said because he's hurting? Is it possible that she did what she did because she's actually struggling with something? It's not easy. It's not easy. But that's why we're saying retrain your thoughts. The Bible says meditate on the praiseworthy aspects of that person that's in your life. So when you feel offended, pause and ask yourself, what else am I not seeing about this situation? Psychologically, this helps us actually develop empathy when we retrain our thoughts and choose to put ourselves in the other's shoes. It helps reduce emotional overreaction. And studies do show that reframing our thoughts also helps us with our mental well-being. It provides clarity and actually helps increase our satisfaction in our relationships themselves. So an example, let's say your spouse doesn't respond to your text. Some of you may remember this one from last time. Your spouse doesn't respond to your text. Instead of spiraling into all manner of thoughts, who is he with? What is he doing? What if you just allow yourself to think, he's busy, she's busy, I'll talk to them later. Or even, like he said, are they okay? Are they okay? As opposed to rushing and thinking the worst. The fourth point is set boundaries. And most importantly, guard your heart wisely. Guard your heart wisely. Proverbs 4:23 says, guard your heart. Above all else, guard your heart, for everything flows out of it. Everything about our lives flows from our hearts. So guard your hearts. Romans 12:18 says, if it is possible, as far as it depends on you, thank you, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. So it's not dependent on my spouse. As far as it is possible, it depends on me to live at peace with everyone. So guarding your heart means protecting your peace. But protecting your peace does not mean build walls that people cannot penetrate, that your spouse cannot penetrate. You need to get into, build healthy boundaries that will allow you to actually heal. A practical example is maybe have a grace jar, a grace jar in your kitchen, or maybe in your bedroom if you don't want us visitors to see how many, pieces of paper might be in there. But have a grace jar, which is a place where you can note offenses that you've released. Sit down together as a couple, review those, and just reflect on how God has helped you grow in His grace about something that may have offended you prior in your relationship. Healthy boundaries reduce anxiety and promote a sense of safety in relationships. So that's why it's important to ensure that you have healthy boundaries. Somebody might be sitting here asking themselves, what's a healthy boundary? Respecting each other's personal space. What does that mean if you're married? Ensure that even when it's time for physical intimacy, that it's consensual. Doesn't mean that because you're married, you can just override. So those are just examples. Emotional boundaries. Respect each other's feelings as you have, your discussions. Time boundaries. Having some personal time and space. So allow each other your hobbies, friends, and personal activities. Those are all just examples of healthy boundaries. Financial boundaries, okay? Respect each other's decisions. Come together, speak about your financial goals. Avoid unnecessary financial pressure or manipulation that may exist in your relationships. And we're out of time, but in conclusion, I think the greatest example we have is that Christ endured betrayal. He endured rejection and was abused. But do we see anywhere where Christ lived offended? And we are constantly reminded that Christ is our compass, that Christ is the goal, is the vision. So if He didn't live offended, may He grace us all to not walk in offense.
Amen. Very quickly, and then we'll hand over to the big bosses there. It's the fact that what this is drawing to our attention to is that within ourselves, by God's grace, we actually do have the power and ability to rise above offense. So if I'm finding it very difficult to overcome, it means that I'm not fully tapping into the resources that are available within me to overcome, given by God's grace. Few questions that we can reflect on this afternoon is the fact that when you are offended, here are three questions you can ask yourself. Even today maybe, who am I silently offended with? And what story have I been telling myself? All of us, when we are offended, we have stories. We can call them internal narrative. And some of this internal narrative can be so wrong and can perpetuate the offense that even shouldn't be there. So today, if you are offended, check the sort of narrative that you are telling yourself, those internal stories. Are they correct? Are they right? And see how you can clarify them. Are there past wounds distorting my present perception? It's very important for us to ask ourselves these questions. Are my past wounds and experiences that I've had as a person, are they affect my current perception. This is important because then you are not going to look at your partner that they are the one who should change. You're also going to look at yourself and see some of the past wounds and that are affecting your perception. Number 3, how does the gospel empower me to release offense? These are questions that you can ask yourself this afternoon. Thank you so much, Brother Francis.
Thank you so much, Pastor K and Mam Kuzi. The cameraman's going to fight with me now. I was sitting there also learning quite a bit because I think you mentioned something about how a relationship is, you also have to work on yourself, on improving, and I think there's a question to that effect. Which, by the way, reminds me, guys, get on Slido, look at the questions, even though you don't feel like asking a question now, look at the questions and you can sort of tap a like on a question so that it can be prioritized. So just do look at Slido and make sure that you do that. But yes, I'm going to get onto the questions because there's quite a bit of questions and they seem quite loaded. So, but with that said, I think I like what you were saying, Pastor K, that we have to work on ourselves. And you also made a very good point. I'm not sure who of the two, which is, I think it was you, Mam Kuzi, about guard your thoughts about your partner. And there's a Bible verse that says, as a man thinketh, or, yeah. So your thoughts are very important about how you feel about your partner. So if you've got negative thoughts that are harboring or rather you're harboring, it does really have an impact. But with that said, can we maybe move on to the questions? And I just want you guys to know that if you do, oh God, more? If you do want to ask a question verbally, I'm very happy to give the mic, and then you can ask the question. But let me just see if we've... Okay, so the first question that is a lot popular is, what does forgiveness look like? If you let go but still feel the pain, have you truly forgiven?
If you let go but still feel the pain,
forgiven.
Have you truly forgiven? I think this is where you made reference to, almost overcoming, I might paraphrase, overcoming your emotions, because we are encouraged to forgive and proactively make that decision. And sometimes our feelings can linger. But you should experience a growth, and when I say a growth in how you feel towards the offender over time. But whether it disappears immediately, I think is optimistic. And doesn't always happen when we've been offended. But you can definitely make the decision to forgive as you trust God to grace you to grow in terms of the pain and the hurt that you do experience as you recover from the offense itself.
A very good question. I'll respond it maybe in two phases as well. One of the ways I've learned to grow in forgiveness is to actually look at what Brother Francis and Carol did today, where I see my own imperfection and my own failures and how I would want somebody to treat me even when I failed, right? And then the other to that also is that when she offends me, I'm still learning, is that try to make the issue less about how you are feeling as a person. Try to gain insight. What could have made them speak to me in a certain way? What is it that is going on in their own world? I'm not trying to tolerate. I'm trying to gain insight into the condition so that I can empathize with my partner. And that way it becomes easier to both forgive and to lessen how I'm feeling about the situation. But in terms of forgiveness, that we don't wait for, you will know you are forgiven when you don't want to inflict pain on your partner for what they have done. Am I making sense? Because when you are hurt, you want your partner to experience, some level of pain for what they've done to you. You know that you haven't forgiven. You are forgiven when you are wishing them well, but you are still hurting. So it's right what she said, that feeling better comes last, right? Before we have made a choice to forgive. But most of us wait for the emotions to feel right, and then we say, I've forgiven you. But what happens as time progresses, we get triggered, we go back to the same state of emotions. So you make a decision to forgive, and you don't wait for the emotions to be right. You gain insight into the state in which maybe the person was in for what they did. You also reflect, how would you want to be treated, when you have offended and you have done something wrong. If you are the one who was found wanting, how would you want to be treated? The same thing that sometimes we want us to be treated kindly when we have done something wrong, but we don't want to extend the same kindness when our partner has done something wrong. So usually when you are offended and you want to really forgive and emotionally also heal, reflect inwardly around that. And then you find that as time progresses, the emotions will align to actually the decision of forgiveness that you've made.
Thank you so much for that. And I think I'm reminded, we have these sessions and these seminars because quite a lot of us do get advice from social media, right? And what does social media say when you've been hurt? Let's be honest. Right? And how much of social media are we consuming? So much. So guard your heart and guard your thoughts. And this is so important. And I mean, again, this is why these sessions are important, because you can have such rich and quality information and feedback and counsel and guidelines. Okay, so moving on to, let's say, the next popular question. It says, how can we navigate? Okay, sorry, things have been updated here. So, relationships are about improving ourselves. Are there some minimum areas that that one must improve on before? And I must mention, before is in caps. Before committing to a relationship. So it says, are there some minimum areas that one must improve before committing to a relationship? So if it was a car, we would say it must at least have 4 wheels. Yeah, so that's the question.
Wow, actually, you're asking very great questions. There are, I think, communication is one of them. For instance, if you were dismissed when you were growing up, chances are that you have grown up not to fully express your mind and yourself. So you get into the relationship, you want your partner to assume that they know what you're going through. So first of all, understand how you have been. You can get feedback maybe from, analyzing your family, yourself, or from friends. Analyze if your inability to communicate is one of them. Temper is one of them. Some of us have a lot of anger within ourselves. No matter how good a woman or a husband is, or no matter how beautiful you are, if you hold on to anger as a person, it's going to destroy the relationship, because if it's not dealt with, it's in levels. It can start by screaming, it can start by breaking things. The next thing can move on to actually where you start to physically abuse someone. So if you feel that emotionally you are just a very angry person, find ways and means to overcome, that emotion. Those are just some of the things that, and also be easy to get along with. This is what I always say, that if you live with a roommate, and you are able to get along with a roommate, it's a precursor that you are relatable. But if you live with a roommate, you're always fighting, you're always arguing about certain things, it's showing you that when you get into actually a romantic relationship, it's going to be double or triple that. So be relatable, be a person, that somebody can get along with, because relationships are about companionship. And in companionship, there is a lot of tolerance that comes, that is required. I'll remember some of the things that she talks.
I think self-awareness is very critical. As a minimum, there's a tendency in relationships to want to walk into one so that you can be completed. No. You need to get into a journey of understanding who you are, what you like, and understand those qualities, so that when you walk into a relationship, communication is key, definitely. But as you are engaging in discussion, it can be a well-balanced communication that you have in that relationship. Lots of people want to walk into relationships for what they want to get. But are you asking yourself, what do I have to offer as I walk into this relationship? I've sat down and written, I want a kind man. Am I a kind woman? So those are the sort of aspects that you need to interrogate yourself and grow in as a person. As you walk in, knowing that when we come together, I'm not going to, what am I here to get? What are you here to give, so that we can build together?
I know there's some question. I think also the other aspect is mindsets as well. Because we're coming from also different backgrounds where we have, there's a way that our minds really also are wired. Issues of entitlement, issues of expectation, all of these things are mindset. Victim mentalities, we can talk about it, where you are the only person that gets offended, you don't offend. All these are also mindsets. I think that, and this is an ongoing journey, I think that the challenge that we have is that less in the past has been pushed in terms of us growing as we get into the relationship. We come as we are, hoping that relationships are going to work with our dysfunction, with our wrong way of thinking and stuff like that. So I think that even recognizing how you think as a person, because how you think and how you view life, if it's not really consistent with how real life works and consistent with the Word of God, I can guarantee you're really going to have challenges navigating relationships. So interrogate your thought patterns, what you think, what comes into your mind, and all that stuff. If you can't get out of your mind and channel your mind the right way, you have no control in terms of channeling even your emotions. So what we think and what comes into our mind and what we entertain has a profound impact in terms of how we show up in relationships.
Thank you for that. I think I think it's so great, because sometimes it's also about, I'm glad you brought the point about anger management and that as one of the basic things. Because look at yourself, wherever you are, whichever room you occupy, there is conflict and you are the lead instigator. There's something wrong. We just, and this is not a relationship thing, or rather it's not a romantic relationship. Any relationship is not going to work with you. You're just an instigator wherever you are. That just does not bode well. But also, I think, again, social media tends to just sway our thinking, because sometimes you may be like that, and you have a huge following who cheer you on for being this person. I will leave it there. There is another popular question which says, how can we navigate the deterioration of tolerance in long-term singleness, where one person makes all the decisions and feels